Well, hello everyone, and welcome to How to Attract Attention and Leads. It's great to have you here, and I'm excited to present this webinar on behalf of Insurance WebEx. First of all, happy Friday, happy first day of summer. It's a beautiful day here. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's wonderful to be able to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, attention. So who is this webinar right for? Well, let's take a minute to think about this. And if you see yourself here, fantastic. If you don't, then you have my permission to just go do something else. And let's see. It's right for people who want to effortlessly attract more of the right attention. And here's a picture of my dog, Hollywood. Holly is probably the most successful being I know that effortlessly attracts more of the right attention. No matter where we go, people want to know who she is, what's her name, what's her breed. And I tell people we had a DNA test for her, and they asked me, did you do Ancestry.com or DNA 123? And no, we did a dog DNA test. She's actually part Shar-Pei. You're probably wondering, what is she? So do you want to effortlessly attract more of the right attention? If yes, you're in the right place. Maybe you want to generate high quality connections, because it's one thing to get attention, but it's another thing to be connected with people and have high quality relationships. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Or maybe you want to really captivate key communities. So you've got attention, you've got really good relationships, and now you're thinking, how do I pull out that scope and really captivate key communities so that I have an audience of people who are really interested in what I have to say? So to recap, you want attention, connections, and key communities. And if that's you, welcome aboard. I'm so happy you're here. And over the next probably 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour, what you're going to discover today are hopefully some aha moments where you will say, wow, I really have learned something new. Maybe I can do this to make my story better. I can do this to get attention. We're going to be talking about tips, tactics, and techniques. And I do want to apologize right up front. I wish I had more time to tell you everything I know, and I don't. That's one thing about webinars, and I love to go to webinars too. It's kind of like, they show you a picture of someone riding a bicycle, and you're like, oh, I'd like to do that, but they don't tell you how to ride the bicycle or how to put it together because they don't have time. So I'm going to give you a glimpse of what you can do and hopefully get you really excited and inspired. And then towards the end, I'll give you a way to continue your learning if you'd like. And I love this photo. It's a great summer photo, going to the beach and just really celebrating the sunset. So let's really think about, how you can really celebrate a better story. And in order to do that, I would love to give you the keys to the storytelling kingdom. Now, I'm a kind of a whimsical person who loves to tell stories. And when I first came up with this presentation that I've been working on and presenting all throughout 2019 so far, I thought, people really need keys to the storytelling kingdom. And I came up with goats, moats, and boats. And when I do presentations live, I say, does anyone here have a goat? And more often than not, someone will put their hand up and I'll say, oh, tell me about your goats. And they'll say, I thought you said boats. And so then we start talking about boats because a lot of people do have boats. And if you've heard of the acronym GOAT, it usually stands for greatest of all time. And in this instance, we're going to use the oats as of a transformational story. So gathering of a transformational story, molding of a transformational story, and broadcasting of a transformational story. So to me, these are the keys to the storytelling kingdom. Now, what do you get if you have the right keys? Well, it's like anything else in life, you need keys to get in places. And if you really want to be successful, you're mastering and having keys to really nice places and things, you're really mastering the use of your time and money. And I feel like this is kind of overused. People talk about time and money, and I'm just like, yeah, I know, I've heard that before. But what really hits home is when you talk about it from a marketing perspective. And as someone who is a marketing consultant, I know how much time and money is just being wasted away every day because people either don't have a strategy, they don't have the money, they don't have the time, but more often than not, they don't have the right story. Because if you don't have a good story, then people don't really know who you are, where to find you, and you wind up with an image like this. It's forgettable. It's something that you don't even want to focus on. It's too much work. And this was taken from inside my car at a parking lot. I take pictures of everything, and my family's always like, why are you taking a picture of that? And sometimes these pictures that are worthless are useful, and this is a good example, because if you were going to really paint a picture of what you would like in your life, it wouldn't be this. You would like to have more time and money. You wouldn't want to have a blurry image. And that's what a blurry story is. It's a blurry image that gets you nowhere. So why am I the person to tell you all about this? You're probably like, well, who is she and why is she here? And why did Insurance WebEx ask her to talk to us today? Well, this is me. This is me smiling with my husband right after we got married. This is after we got back from our trip to Hawaii. I won a sales contest, which is super exciting. You can see how happy we are. But what you don't know is I was the very worst person in sales in my company. I was like zero. I was even lower than zero. No sales, barely. I had a lot of appointments, but I really didn't have very many proposals. And so I resigned. I went to my boss and I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm terrible. And he said, well, do you have another job? And I said, well, no. And he said, well, then I guess you just need a new territory. And I was just distraught because I thought, I just can't do sales anymore. I'm terrible at it. But I moved to the new territory, which coincidentally brought me back to my boyfriend. He was my boyfriend at the time. And I had been living in Indianapolis, so I moved back by him. So that was one reason to take the job. Took the job, and within a year, I was leading the company in sales. So it was just like, what happened? And what happened was I learned to tell a better story. It really, really got me to where I needed to be. And then, as far as being a speaker goes, my top, I really feel like it's really one of the top gigs I've ever had, or performance opportunities. It was to speak at $1 Million Roundtable's annual conference. And here I'm speaking to an empty room. I know that this is the rehearsal. The room was set for 1,500 people. So you have to believe me that people really did come in. But I was there to really talk about how insurance agents can use LinkedIn to tell their personal story. And I gave them tips and tools and tactics. So what's interesting to me about this is I know this story. And I don't always talk about it, but I have a few friends, and that's how they introduce me. They introduce me to other people, and the first thing they say is, she spoke at MDRT. And the person that they're talking to either gets it or they don't. For some people, they're like, okay, most everybody's nice, and they're like, oh, that's cool. But for the people in the meetings and the events in the hospitality industry, they get it, and they do think it's quite an accomplishment. For me, it was a fun thing to do. But it's just an example of how maybe you might be undertelling your stories and other people really want to tell a better story for you. I do have a family. This is my family. And I like to say I have the very best family in the world, and I hope you do too. I hope you can say that about yours. This is an interesting story because my son, I know he graduated, this is a graduation picture, and I know as insurance agents and financial planners, one of the things you do is you help build the story in people's minds. So you might say to someone who has a young child, if they're thinking about life insurance or college planning, you might say, oh, imagine the day of college graduation. You're sitting there, you're watching your child. I never really thought I would experience that. I don't know. I guess I thought our kids would graduate, but I never really was tied into the emotions as much as I actually was that night, and I still am thinking about it. So I feel like, emotions, and if you can talk to people about where you reach their milestones, and even milestones in your life are so important. And the inspiring story here is this kid didn't really care about high school. I mean, his grades were okay. But I never really thought he would go to college. I mean, I thought he would, but not do that well, and he wound up graduating summa cum laude from the top business school in Chicago, which is really, it just goes to show that if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. And it's a great inspirational story. And then my son Peter is in LA. If you're ever out in LA, he's out there in the entertainment industry. My daughter Phoebe is in Chicago in social media. My husband's here in Charlotte with me. We just moved here about a month ago. And then things I like to do that bring me to the table as a trainer. I love talking to people about how they can make things happen, and I'm into books, The Success Secrets of the Social Media Marketing Superstars and The Success Secrets of Online Marketing Superstars. This is me with Bill McDermott, who wrote the book Dreamer's Dream or Winner's Dream, and if you're looking for a good inspirational book, that's a good one. That was in Germany. And my company is named after Corey West, and that is my mother and grandmother, who were great storytellers. Unfortunately, my grandmother was with me only till I was 3, and my mother was with me only till I was 17. So I named my company after them so they could be in my life every day. Now, what I love to do is take people on a trail. And if you like to hike, you know that you can go on a scenic trail or you can go on a cinch trail. This is from a trip to Arizona. And my husband is a scenic trail guy. He's climbed mountains, reached summits. That's his thing. He likes to really go as high as he can. And if there's the more adventure there is, the better. And I like to go on a cinch trail where I can take some beautiful pictures, have a good time, and not really overextend myself. And I feel like marketing and storytelling is like that. You know, you can go on the scenic trail where you can take a long time putting things together. You can go over a lot of mountains, dip into a lot of valleys. It can take a long time before you get to your destination, and it could be a lot longer than it needs to be. So what I love to do is sit down with people and say, where do you want to go? And let's get you there as fast as we can with as much fun as we can and really help you to achieve your goals better and more creatively. So let's dip right into goats, boats, and moats. And if you like goats like I do, then you probably love this picture. And honestly, I had so much fun picking out a picture of goats. I do have some in my own photography portfolio. This isn't one of mine. I am a professional photographer, and so I'm thinking about going and taking pictures of baby goats tomorrow because I just love goats. And when you think about the gathering of a story, here is one way. This is probably one of the most complicated ways. And we think about writing and gathering and just really where do you start with the story and where does it go? So what I wanted to do was research different kinds of ways to present a story. And this is one of the premier ways to do it. It's also one of the most complex. It's The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. I think there are, 18 different steps. And I showed someone the slide and they're like, that's a lot to look at. And I said, it sure is. And if you're going to be telling stories, what you need to think about, and today we are just going to focus on your personal brand story, a short one. We don't have time to go into the whole collection. But if you're thinking about a short or story, it's going to take a really long time to get through the 18 steps. You're probably never going to be able to do it. But it is good for reference. And if you do want to really research storytelling, this is a good place to go. So I thought, what can I really do to make storytelling more concise and really just more energetic and a way to really pump the ideas and recharge? And CPR storytelling came to mind. And I presented a program on CPR storytelling, I think probably about 10 years ago at the request of a person in our community who was in his 80s. And he wanted me to do a presentation to his Kiwanis group. So I sent him all my marketing things. And he said, well, that's not what I want you to do. And I said, well, what do you want me to present on? Because that's what I talk about. And he said, well, people in my group are really starting to give up, but they have such amazing stories. I want you to motivate them to tell their stories. And so I came up with this 3-part structure for him and for them. And it was really just a way for them to be able to think about storytelling as a method of communication and really preserving some of those great moments. And for you, I want you to really think about yourself as a storyteller and really capture every moment you can in this kind of shorthand format. And it's really simple. It's just 3 steps: challenge, process, and result. So what is the biggest challenge that this person is facing? What is the process that helps them get to the result? That's it. It's really simple. Now here is the kicker though. This is not a story about you. You could be in the story, but you are not the hero. The hero of the story is going to be your client. And I want it to be the best client that you have. Now, maybe you don't have anyone like this right this minute, but it's somebody you really want to have as your client. And so what I want you to think about is, what is their biggest challenge? What do you really help people with the most? And it should be something pretty simple. It could be financial security. It could be retirement planning, college planning. I know those can be very complex, but what is the challenge? What do they really need? And it could even be maybe they need to save more money. I'm not sure, but what is the challenge? Then what process do you use? And the process is really the customer journey. And it could be anything from an interview to filling out an application or a form to getting approved. So what is the process the person goes through? And then what is the result? So is the result that now they're insured, they have more of a financial protection vehicle, maybe they're getting more returns on their investments. So it's like I said, it's very simple: the challenge, the process, and the result. So this is really the crux of storytelling for me. And yes, you can make it much more complex, but if you think of every case study that you have or every best customer story, if you can break it down into these 3 parts, and then you can compress it into a 2-minute, think of it like a movie trailer, something very short, and then if you want to do something longer, you can. You can even take it so far as to be like a case study where you have testimonials. If you want to get really involved, you could do a video with high production value, or it could just be something really simple where it's just an interview. This is also something, if you're asking for testimonials and referrals, this is an easy way to ask people to complete them as well. And I know that you do have guidelines with social media, so you want to make sure that you're adhering to those. But if you're just telling a story of a client, then challenge, process, and result is great. And this is also really good for networking, because when people ask you what you do, you can say, I help people who are challenged with, you could say financial planning or protecting their retirement, with a process that allows them to pinpoint their greatest areas of opportunity so that they have better coverage, security, and a brighter future. So those are some really quick ideas of how you can use CPR storytelling. So that's the GOATS part of the system. Now let's jump into moats. Well, actually, let's not jump into a moat, because we'd be all wet. But a moat, if you know what a moat is a circle of water that goes around a castle. And this is a moat that was in Japan, I saw it last October. And I love the concept of moats, and the M is for molding in this section, just to, how you're going to mold your marketing. I love the concept of moats because it is it's kind of like the building or the castle that's inside the moat is a safe place. And the only way you can get inside the moat or out of it is on a drawbridge. And if you have clients who really love what you do and you're keeping them safe, then it is kind of like you have them in a moat inside your castle. And this is an example of a castle that is inside a moat. This is Hampton Court Palace outside of London. And if you saw the movie The Favorite, then you're very familiar with this. And this is the place where the kings and queens walked, and they went out in the courtyard. There was a quartet playing while we were there, which was just beautiful. And everyone was very comfortable being inside the palace. If you go to the kitchens inside the palace, you can visit them and you can see all the food they were making. So it's like a self-contained community. And really, I feel like that's kind of how clients are when you do the right kind of service for them. Your service that you provide for them is a comfortable place for them, it's a safe place, and it's a place they don't really feel like they have to leave because they're very well taken care of. And so we talked about the character, the main character in the story not being you. It needs to be a customer. So it could be a single person, it could be a couple, it could be maybe you work with groups, but there needs to be some kind of a character behind it. And the more emotions you can bring into your story, the better. And this is just an example of what happens on Facebook when brand characters are used. And when I show this slide, people say things like, wow, I would have thought the Keebler Elves did better, or boy, I don't think I'd ever use gnomes in my marketing. So I'm not suggesting that you have an anime character, although companies like Lowe's have used sci-fi characters very successfully. That's something you could think about. But really think about how you can develop the character of the person that you serve. And we talked about process a little bit before, and the way to really mold your story is to have a process or a system. So your challenge is to really come up with a better story, and the process you need is the one I'm presenting, which is the WIRED system. This is something I've been using since, I think almost 2005, and it's been presented to groups as large as the Federal Reserve down to just, people who are everyday people. Well, everyone's an everyday people, but this is the system that I've come up with, and it's a very simple 5-point system. It's simple but extremely powerful. It's lightweight, but it's really got a very steel-like framework. So I'm going to walk you through this very quickly, but the first part is words. So this is the words that you're going to use. It encompasses a lot of things. It can be things like what you're going to use as far as emotional words go, how you're going to structure your story. And one of the types of words I like to talk about is SEO keywords and then also hashtags. So how are people really going to find out about you? And this is like if you're talking to someone that you meet at a networking event, you're not going to say hashtag sales. You're not going to do that. But there are keywords that people listen for. And instead of saying sales, you could say connector, problem solver. So what kind of words are you going to use that are persuasive and also intriguing? The next part is intentions. And what are the client's intentions as well as your intentions? And I know when I set my intentions, I get a lot better results. So it could be like your intention is to really help them fulfill a specific need in their overall financial plan. That would be a great intention. If your intention is just to go and get to know them, that's probably not quite as strong. So you really want to have good intentions. And intentions are different than goals. I know there's SMART goals. Intentions are a little bit lighter weight, but I feel like they're just as strong. And they can even be stronger because I feel like with the goal, there's so much focus on especially SMART goal numbers and all that other stuff. That's okay, but you really think the feeling and the intention is really important. The next part is routes. And routes are really how are you going to reach people? And that goes back to the customer journey. So probably a mix of face-to-face, some online, and we'll talk about more of that in the next section. But really pick only one or two that are going to work really well for you. And one of the most undiscovered routes, I think, is public relations, and another one is events. If you're looking for a way to really edge out competition, public relations and events are two ways because not everybody is going to do that. So routes are really, really important. And then the experiences. What kind of experiences are you going to talk about? What kind of experience will people have when they deal with you? How is that going to work? And it could be anything from, when they go to your office, they're going to meet someone and they're going to get some kind of beverage, or maybe you always meet them at a certain coffee shop, but there's an experience. The experience of dealing with you is a brand, and you don't want to forget that. So you want to make sure the experience is great and it ties into the story. And then the last part is design in 4D, and we're going to go into that in the next section. But it's really important that you design your story and your framework so that you've got cohesiveness, and you've got stability, and you've got a way to really approach it in a wired manner so that you can really be more creative and more concise, and more effective. So then the last part we're going to talk about today is boats, and these are boats that are in the harbor getting ready to go out, and boats again is broadcast. So now that you've gathered your story and you know your format is going to be challenge, process, and result, you know that you have a setting and you've got your characters. You are in the story, but you are not the hero. Your client is the hero. And you've really thought about your wired structure. We're going to go into, well, we've got this all together. How do we broadcast it? And these are some ways you can do marketing. Video is really, really important. If you're not doing video right now, you really need to think about it. I've been saying this since 2005 when I was doing video marketing workshops, and people looked at me like, why would anyone ever do that? So it's super easy to do video. I mean, you can even do a quick 30-second video on Instagram. But once again, the more you decide to do, the more weighed down you get. So we don't want to think about doing everything, but these are just some ways that you can get your story out. You can also, like if you have a great story and you've got a case study that's really compelling, that's something you could talk to someone who's a podcast producer about featuring you. You could contribute a blog post. You can write a press release. And you can, of course, communicate on social media. An ebook is really simple to do. If you just want to record what like top 10 questions and answers and then have that transcribed, then you've already got an ebook. So there's a lot of different ways, but before we get carried away, let's talk about the 4 different directions of design. And that would be digital, direct, dynamic, and data. So digital is anything that pops up on the screen, and that could be social media, it could be email, it could be your website. And if you don't have a mobile website now, really make sure that you have one, because websites that aren't coming up on mobile just aren't making it. So from a storytelling perspective, you really want to have your story right up front. And we talked about words, intentions, routes, experiences, and now we're on design. One thing you can really think about doing is having images that tell your story. So if you have a set of images or even like image guidelines so that people can continually recognize who you are, that would be fantastic. The next method is direct, and that means one-on-one. And this could be at networking events. If you're a speaker, it could be your presentations. It's even the way you talk to people on the phone. And it's really all about direct communications, which to me is kind of an understudied area of communications. It could also mean direct mail. It's one-on-one. But this area is becoming more and more important because one of the big components of direct marketing is personalization. And personalization, it's like so hot right now, although it's been around forever. But the more you can personalize the story and your marketing, the better it is. So for example, if you know you do really, really well with young families, maybe your storylines are all about young families. Maybe your image is about young families. Maybe you join groups that have young families in your area. And so you really focus on directly relating to that demographic. The next part is dynamic. So how are you going to make your story dynamic and emotional? And this goes into having an editorial content calendar and really thinking about how can we tease out those really good story elements. And what I find is people who try to do it themselves, that's okay, but we really tend to underrepresent our own story. It's just, the way our culture is. It's like we are admonished for saying anything great about ourselves. And if everybody knows somebody who walks around and talks about how great they are, and people just kind of laugh and say, oh yeah, they think they're so great. And it's funny, but good for them in a way because they are self-confident. So you want to make sure that your stories are dynamic and they're grabbing people in a really good way. They have to be relatable. So, and that's where when you take yourself out of the story and you put the hero in the story, that's really, really great. And then the last part is data. What's the point of telling a story if you don't know how good it's performing? And data is a way that we really measure what's happening. Now, you can take data to really high intense types of levels. I heard someone talking this week about how they use data in scientific labs to really gauge people's emotions when they're listening to the brand story, so they can really trigger that buying switch. They really are precise in measuring what it takes to make that person decide to buy, which is really kind of fascinating, but most of us aren't going to get to that level. But what you can do is you can even do basic data measurement, and you can see what ads do well. You can measure those. You can see, even when you tell stories, you can see what kind of reaction and response you get. And that would be something I would watch for. Even if you're telling stories about, now I'm kind of moving off of the personal story about how you're serving clients into even more entertaining stories. If you're looking for what really makes people respond, and it could be a laugh or it could be, oh, I can't believe that, but what really do you have in your inventory of stories that really is a grabber? So that is the last part, is digital, direct, and dynamic, and data. So now you know how to effortlessly attract more of the right attention, generate high-quality connections, and captivate key communities using those storytelling keys, GOATs, moats, and boats. So gathering, molding, and then broadcasting your story. So, you start out getting your story straight, and then you get it to the right people, and then they can spread it out for you. Once again, here are the keys to the storytelling kingdom. And you would want to think with GOATs, you want to think about what is your CPR storytelling method, what is your challenge, your process, and your result. And then to think about the process under molding, you can use the wired system to really shape your story. And then both, how are you going to deliver it and broadcast it? Remember, it's in 4D, digital, direct, dynamic, and data. So how can you make all this happen in an easy way? And there is an answer for that. It's called the CPR Storytelling Magic System. And yes, this is me. In my presentations, I do wear that crown. And now I live in the Queen City, so that's really awesome. But I went to the Renaissance Fair last summer, and I was just going to go as a person. And of course, since my daughter is into cosplay, she said, you can't do that. And I said, well, what should I do? And she said, you should go as a queen. And I said, okay. So I ordered this purple dress out of Amazon.com. That was a challenge. The challenge was finding a costume. And the star of the story is really my daughter, because she was the one who really wanted her mother to look like she belonged. And so then she picked out the crown. Well, we get to the Renaissance Fair, and automatically, as soon as we walk in, I get a ticket because I'm wearing purple, and only the queen can wear purple. I didn't know that. And then we went to a presentation. It was actually a play where the queen and her court were accepting visitors from around the world. And the ladies in waiting behind me were whispering, because didn't she know that only the queen can wear a crown? So I walked into the Renaissance Fair, one of, 5,000 people there that day, and I was the one who got attention because I was dressing like a queen, which was completely unintentional. And then I found all these wizards, and I had to get a picture with them. But the moral of the story here is, even an everyday person can be the queen of the fair, and or the king of the fair. And it was just really funny how that worked. But for you, I can help you get that kind of attention. Now, some of you are sitting there saying, no, I don't like that. You're like Michael from The Office. You've listened to me, and you're like, this is not going to work for me. I don't have time for it. I don't really like storytelling. I don't know why I'm here, but my computer's just running. I'm eating lunch, and I'm going to sit here, and then I'm done. Maybe you don't really have anything invested in your story, and you figure, I'm just not interested. That's fine. There's always going to be people who are, and if you're in sales, there are always going to be people who do not like what you have. But for those of you who do think, well, maybe this could work for me, there's some reasons here why you might buy. And I do need to tell you, I would never, ever recommend making a slide like this. There is way, way too much copy on it. And the reason I have all this copy is so that you can read it. And if you want to screen cap it, you can. And certainly there's got to be one or two things on here that you really want to do. And maybe it's really just the last one. You want to attract more attention, leads, and sales. So that is a good enough reason, but maybe it's about your legacy, or maybe you really want a proven recipe. Maybe it's like, I really want to have a good story, but I'm not sure how to do it, so I need somebody to help me figure it out. You want to get results right now. You're tired of waiting around. You want a competitive edge. You can't get it anywhere else. So you really want to hone your edge so that you can stand out as the person that people really want to do business with. Maybe you really have no clue how important you really are. And I think this is a big one. You know, a lot of people don't. I talk to them and I said, do you have any idea how important you are? And they really underappreciate who they are. And you are really, really important. People need to know what you can do for them. And I am happy to be the person that can tell you how great you are and help you get your serious story upgrade right now. The outcomes you're going to get, you'll go from being fuzzy to focused, because there's nothing worse than going somewhere and having people say, what do you do? And not being able to tell them, or when you meet with the client, starting off on some canned presentation with numbers that are just going to take them off track. And by the way, stories are 22 times more likely to convince people to buy than statistics and numbers. So you might have a great presentation with all kinds of numbers and charts, but just remember, one story is 20 times more powerful than a number. You want to infuse emotions into persuasive stories. We know that the type of services that you sell, life insurance, financial planning, retirement planning, those are emotional types of decisions. So you have to have an emotional story. And then you really want an exact map to your best prospects. And if you know who the star of your story is, that person and those people are going to be easy to find. You want to tell a story that everyone wants to hear and also retell. So that's it. You know, if you can tell someone a story that people are like, wow, I love that story, you know, that's what we want to help you do so that you can attract more attention, leads, and sales. So if you're still with me, here's the CPR Storytelling Magic System. We're going to do 4 weekly webinars. So every week we'll check in and you'll get a guide to the topic of the week. We'll walk you through the complete system. You'll have a study group so that you can talk to each other, and we'll have review sessions, because I'm the type of person where I like to teach, and this is in beta format, so I will be very involved. It's not like you buy it, you never see it again. And then we will have storytelling practice rounds. So this is an opportunity to really get involved, roll up your sleeves, and really get to work. And I do need to tell you that if you are watching this replay anytime after summer of 2009, this is going to roll into a course, and so the one-on-one interaction with me is probably not going to be there. But right now it is, and I really, really want to get to help people as much as I can. So what is the investment? Should it be $1 million? Yeah, it should be $1 million. I myself have made over $1 million helping tell other people's stories, and I'm sure you could too, but that's ridiculous. I'm not going to charge you $1 million. That just would be funny. Like hilariously funny. So then, could it be $100,000? Well, $100,000 is what we would charge a corporation to manage social media for about a year. That's a lot of money. No one here on this phone call is representing a Fortune 50 company, I don't think. And if you are, welcome. I'd love to talk to you offline. Or is it going to be $10,000? Because $10,000 is the starting point for our CPR Storytelling Magic System when we work with personal clients. So is it going to be, it's not going to be any one of those, but it is going to be $997. So just a shade under the minimum fee of getting started. It does come with a 90-day risk-free guarantee. Now, just a caveat here, it is risk-free. We do ask that you do attend every webinar and that you do some of the work, because if you don't putting an effort in, you're not going to get anything out of it. So I would love to really have you participate. Bonuses, you're going to get both ebooks. You're going to get the LinkedIn ebook and the PR ebook from Success Secrets of the Social Media Marketing Superstars and Success Secrets of the Online Marketing Superstars. And then you'll also be part of a study group, which I think is going to be invaluable to you. For the first 5 people that sign up, you do get a 90-minute storytelling magic one-on-one session with me that's valued at $1,500. So that's an incredible bonus. It's like you're getting the whole storytelling magic system for free. So this is something to think about. This Fast 5 bonus is good through, well, let's see, Friday. I'll make it good through Sunday. So if you can sign up through Sunday, that would be great. So your major transformation is going to be from having a story that gets you nowhere, or maybe it's like, you know, I was talking to somebody and we're talking about cars that get charged. You know, if the charge goes low, it stops and it can't go very far. But if you have a car that's got a full tank of gas or a full charge, you can go a lot of places. So this is really going to fuel you to really take your story and really attract attention, the right connections, and key communities. This is a website you need to go to. It's cprstorytelling.com. That's cprstorytelling.com. And when you get there, it will look like this. This is actually housed inside my blog, Wired PR Works, and if this is what the page looks like. So once again, this is what you get. You'll have 4 webinars, a study group, review sessions, and storytelling practice rounds. So what's going to happen is you are going to really dig in and learn how to be a great storyteller. You're going to know how to tell your personal brand story, your company story, and also any kind of client stories. So what we want to do is help you develop a universe of stories, not just one, but just a whole portfolio that you can refer to. And you'll also really get into that mindset of how to be a good storyteller. So once again, here is the website, cprstorytelling.com. And this is the end of the presentation. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that you decide to join us for this. It will start on July 9th. We are going to have 4 different sessions. And I would love to know more about what you do and how I can help you out. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn at Barbara Rosgoni. You can follow my blog at Wired PR Works. That's WIRED-PRWorks.com. And the last thing I'll leave you with is this. What would happen if you had a story that was so compelling that it not only changed your client's life, but it changed your life as well? What would your business look like? How would you feel? And what would the rest of the year and your life look like? So thanks for investing this time. I know you have a fantastic story inside of you, and I'd love to help you tell it.